Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today we have a super lucky, I want to call it lucky episode where we're going to recap the attempt 2 at the Uinta Highline Trail. We just got off trail, was it last week? And so we're going to talk to you guys about how that went, the ups, the downs, the exciting parts, the dramatic parts, all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and have these guys introduce themselves, and with the introduction, I'm going to have them also state their mentality going into the hike, whether they were excited, whether they were concerned, if they had any injuries, just a little bit of background. Were they on the trip last time? Were they not? So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll start with you, Derek. Explain or introduce yourself and give just a little bit of context for you going into this trip.
All right, I'm Derek. I do marketing here, and I was pretty dang excited to go on the Highline Trail. After not finishing last year, I was just kind of amping myself up to get the whole thing done this year, and I was pretty excited about that. Excited to spend the week outdoors in the mountains and enjoy that, and so I was excited.
Okay, Tyler?
Cool. I'm Tyler, over operations, and I was definitely excited to go out and try again, but I was also determined to not get hypothermia. So I had a lot more clothing this time.
Tyler, so for those of you that aren't aware of our backstory with this particular trail, we did attempt this a year ago, and the first part of the trail went all right, except for we had some sickness on the trail. After we sorted that out, we ran straight into some crazy weather patterns in August where we actually got snowed off of the trail and had to quit the trail. And it was kind of a big deal because we had been building up to this all summer long. A ton of our content all summer long was about prepping for this and preparing for this and training for this. And so we got out there, and to get snowed off the trail was a big slap in the face. And I think it left all of us with a bit of a bitter taste in our mouth, per se, of just kind of wanting to go back for revenge. At least that's kind of how I felt, as the trail won that year in that week, but wanted to get out there and show that I could do it to myself, that we could do these kind of mileage and go through this country, but also just be able to push through. So on that note, Tyler is referring to the fact that he was freezing cold last time, and is just like the rest of us pretty much were in our shorts and trail runners. But they were all very jealous of a particular rain skirt that I had last time. So Tyler actually went and built himself out of an old OV tarp that was around. He built himself some rain gear. So
yeah,
built some rain pants and some rain mitts, if for nothing else, just to help retain warmth, because that water and the wind just whipping on you on those high peaks can just zap the heat out of you. So anyway, so Tyler, good introduction. Personally, I was excited for the trip, but I was also coming off of the week previously having run my very first ultra marathon that ended up being about 45 miles. And so I was physically beat, and I was very concerned because I had a lot of pain in my lower leg, and it kept swelling up and having issues. And so I was very concerned that I'd get out there and it was going to get worse, and that it could fester into me not being able to do the mileage that we need to do. And so I was quite concerned just physically how that was going to play out on the trail. But other than that, I was pretty dang excited for the trail. So Brigham?
Yep, I am Brigham. I work here. I was really excited. Don't interrupt.
Sorry.
I was really excited to go out again and knock out this trip. I was really motivated to kind of knock it out in the same itinerary that we wanted to last year. And just it's a bucket list hike for me that I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm very familiar with the Uinta Mountains, and I've spent a lot of time up there. But being able to kind of I guess the way that I view it is it's like a highlight reel of the Uinta Mountains, to kind of walk the whole length east to west or west to east, and just kind of get like the best of the best of the Uintas. And so I was really excited to get out there and do the whole thing.
Joe, I'm the content creator here, and I was excited. I heard about this trail years and years ago, but my I guess my history with through hikes is not it's not a very complete one, and therefore I was pretty scared about doing the amount of miles that you guys wanted to do per day, and so I started training about, I guess, 8 months beforehand is when I decided that I was going to at least try to get in shape for it as best I can within the time period that I could. And so, yeah, I guess I was excited, but also cautious about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I good to talk, Brigham?
Please.
Not interrupting anymore. Okay. So yeah, we're going to actually walk you guys through this trip. There was quite a bit that transpired, some good takeaways from it. For just a hair more background on the Uinta mountain range, it's a big mountain range, basically 100 miles east to west. And then as you get into the trail, you are, up to 12, at a minimum typically, about 12 miles like to go north or south to get out of the range. And so it's really unique in the sense that you can walk almost 100 miles with like never feeling like you're getting closer to a road for the most part, or at least a good like 60, 70 miles of that before you even can get to a dirt road. You cross like 1 or 2 dirt roads in the entire time, and they're all kind of on the far side. So you can walk about 60, 70 miles, it seems, before you even bump into that. So it's really incredible in that sense. The trail also is 85% of it is over 10,000 feet. Pretty much it feels like you're over 10,000 feet from the time you start at the car. And since we started on the west side of the range this time, which apparently is completely backwards from what every single other hiker does, we started on the east side last year. We decided to start on the west side this time to try to get through some of the big passes before weather came. But I mean, from the moment you step out of that car, you are at really high altitudes, which poses a lot of difficulties, whether it's hydration, altitude sickness, exposure to sun, exposure to elements, all those kinds of things, lightning, all sorts of things that are just going to be more prevalent at that type of elevation, and especially being that far into the wilderness. So it's a really cool hike. It's definitely one that like Joe said, you want to be dialed in with your gear, you want to be dialed in with your systems, you want to be physically prepared for it, because it's a pretty unforgiving trail once you start it. So so there's some of the background. So what we decided to do this time was, last time we started on a Sunday evening, we drove up and slept up there. This time we thought we'd shortcut it a little bit, and we actually started at about 5 a.m. at the office and drove up there, picked up Joe along the way, got to the trailhead, and started hiking at 11 a.m., so about an hour before noon. Our goal for the day was to get somewhere around 18 miles, so we knew that we had our work cut out for us, and that was pretty much the theme of the rest of the trip, was trying to keep up with our goals for mileage for the day. But
even before mileage, like when we're planning it out, we're looking at the passes that we had to get over, because you'll go through a big basin and then you'll come up to a big pass that opens up to another basin on the other side and has big peaks on either side of it. And so for day one, the goal was to get over 2 high mountain passes. And that was essentially the goal for each day, was to cover the 2 biggest, scariest passes of that day. So, did we mention we did this in 5 days? Did we mention
Not yet, yeah. We did have a goal to finish I think it ended up being somewhere between 105 and 110 miles, which is what we were expecting. But the goal is to finish that, start on a Monday and finish on a Friday. We were kind of prepared. Well, actually, we found out halfway through that 4 of the 5 of us were prepared to stay till Saturday. Brigham was committed to finish on Friday no matter what. He didn't bring any extra food. So, but no, we were trying to get that done in basically 4.5 days, is kind of what it ended up being. So what that equated to is a lot of the days being at least 22 or more miles. Pretty big endeavor. And I think we'll get into it as we go along, but doing that day after day starts to compound. So
I was pretty jealous of Brigham not bringing that last day of food, because when we got to the end, which we did finish on Friday, I had, like,
Hey, no
almost
spoilers.
2 days worth of food almost left in my pack. And I'm like, I've been carrying around all this,
Yeah.
like 5 extra pounds, like all week.
Yep. There's a little bit of jealousy when I probably mentioned that. You might have heard through my voice, but let's go back to Monday. So we start the trail. It's 11 a.m. Brennan, who actually got sick on trail with this last year, he actually shuttle drove for us this year. So he drove us up, dropped us off, and we started the trail. Tons of cars at the trailhead, tons of horse trailers. But as we got on the trail, didn't pass a whole lot of people, and I don't know. The miles to me seemed like they clicked off pretty dang easy, from the start over to our first pass, which was Rocky Sea Pass.
Real quick, if you're going to start on that same trailhead that we started on, make sure you pay the applicable fees. Brigham walked up and down some of those cars. Tayson mentioned there was a ton of trucks and cars parked, and at least half of them had tickets in the windshield. So
Nice.
that was something to note.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we started there above 10,000 feet there at Hayden Pass. And so we're already quite high elevation. Went through a burn area and then got to Rocky Sea Pass. Yeah, that was the last pass, right? Rocky Sea Pass?
The last
pass of the day.
No,
that was the first.
Oh, no, that was the first one. I'm
major
sorry.
one,
That
yeah.
was where we had lunch, right on top.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a nice pass.
It's cool.
Yeah. I think things are going well. I mean, by the time we got to Rocky Sea Pass is when it started to get more and more pretty. I think the start, we were in the trees pretty well. We went through a little bit of a burn. But then, we basically stopped maybe around 2 o'clock or something for lunch. And that we were just right in the middle of this pass called Rocky Sea Pass. And it was really pretty. It's like when you basically get to come up and you get to see the stuff behind us, which is really pretty. But then you crest over and you're just like, yep, we're back in the high country of the Uintas. You just look at a massive basin and a ton of, just high elevation peaks.
Something Brigham pointed out to me when we were on that first pass was looking out across, you could see all the way to Mount Timpanogos, which is this big mountain in like the middle of the States in like Orem, Utah. And the fact that you could see, I don't know, how many miles was that? Like 60 miles or something like that? Way out there.
Probably, yeah.
And that was kind of cool. You could just kind of like look out there and see forever all the way into that distance. So you're out in the wilderness, but just past that one mountain, that's where the cities are at.
Yeah. I think we do have to note one thing also about the hike in. We passed like the first group and said hi, and then we passed like the second group and said hi, and then we passed like the third group and said hi, and I was like, is it me or is everyone out here not look that happy right now? It was a strange thing but everyone we were passing also was carrying, they either had like big external frame backpacks or they maybe like were with like a scout group or something like that, and I don't know. It was very.
That's someone who was fishing, and they asked if he caught any fish, and they said, nope, not really.
Yeah. Maybe the fishing was bad. I don't know. But we were all in really high spirits, all smiling away, and everyone else looked like it was their last day and they were ready to be out of there. But I don't know if there's really any takeaways from that. But I feel like it was interesting as we went farther into the wilderness, more people were more happy. But the other thing I feel like I noticed is more people were more, you could tell they were more like comfortable in the backcountry. Maybe whether that was their gear or they're just prevalent, their appearance in the backcountry, like they were like more comfortable there, just like they belonged. But
some of those people we saw on the first day, I don't think they'd really been doing the whole Highline Trail. We talked to had just been there like overnight, like a quick, in and out kind of trip, and those are the ones that looked fairly miserable with big heavy packs.
Yeah, they definitely
didn't catch
have
any fish.
Yeah, they definitely look like people that don't do it very much. And it was kind of like maybe they're once or twice a year big adventure.
Yeah,
which it makes sense. I'd say that adds up pretty well.
We definitely want everyone to get outdoors and experience the backcountry, but it just kind of reminded me, I think, of maybe my experiences growing up of being pretty miserable in the backcountry versus, getting more knowledge and getting better gear and just how that kind of changes the perspective of what you feel like on trail and what you potentially look like to the passersby. So anyways.
That first burn area I thought looked really, that was actually like kind of a ghostly burn area. You could see like the pristine blue water surrounded by all these like dead trees. And,
before Rocky Sea Pass?
Yeah, like the very first burn area that we went through, that was actually like really cool, and I have some neat pictures in there. But then after Rocky Sea Pass, we went through that was the big burn, right? Like the one we almost hiked around, but then decided to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like a big question that we actually had. We mapped out a route to go around the burn area because we weren't sure we wanted to deal with all the fallen trees and lack of trail and try to find our way through, multiple miles of burn that kind of covered the original Highline Trail. But when we actually got to the juncture where we had to make the choice, we decided to go through the burn. It would actually cut off about 4 miles off of our day. And I'm actually really glad we did that because when we hiked through the burn, it wasn't that bad. There was a couple trees that we had to go over, but most of them, if there was a tree that had fallen, there was a clear path where you could see other people had been walking around it. That was really easy to do with just a few trees to step over. And so honestly, it was fairly easy to get through that burn area, and it was beautiful.
I made a big point of
everywhere.
Yeah. I made a big point of not being the one to decide that, though, because I feel like I've decided to walk through burns before, and certain people in the group have not appreciated walking through deadfall and stuff, so we reluctantly drug Brigham through the burn, and I think he was happy with it.
Yeah, there was no dragging. And to be fully transparent, Tayson has taken us through some terrible routes before that were 10 times worse than this.
I can second that.
That's where a little bit of my hesitance fell, but no, it was totally worth going through that burn. It was maybe a little bit slower pace than like standard, but it was definitely faster than walking or all the way around.
Yeah. So. One of my favorite parts about it, though, like I was saying, there's all this new growth that had a decent amount of time to grow up around in between and through all the burned trees, and there's these really bright flowers everywhere.
Bright purple flowers.
Mixing in with all the black trees. I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool looking.
It was the first time I had seen moss like growing on the ground in a burn. It was pretty unique to just see like moss growing on the ground like that, and then one of the first things to start growing, after a burn like that. So it was cool. It was unique in that sense. But the way that this basin was laid out is that we basically started to drop down to the bottom of the basin, down to a bigger river essentially down there, and then we'd turn and hike up the burn to get across the basin. And I would say it was maybe around here where you were starting to feel a little bit of the hike.
That's where
Joe?
I started to feel it, yeah. I had done a shakeout hike a week before, and I knew what my speed was going to be. I told everybody what it was going to be. But I had done like 27 miles because I thought that would be matching the biggest day of the hike. I don't know if it ended up actually matching that, but and I realized after the midway point, so after about 13 miles, that's when my body started to be like, you're done. And I mean, I hiked through it okay, but it was definitely a lot slower. First 13 miles, I could hike normally. The last, 13 and a half miles, it was a lot slower going. And it was the same here. It was basically the same thing. Like right after that burn area is when we clicked 13 miles, and that's when my body was like, yeah, you're done. And so every time we'd go uphill, I'd get pretty winded. So like physically exhaustion-wise for me, that's when I started to feel it then.
At this point, were you feeling...
On that first day.
Were you feeling like, how to say, like soreness, or were you feeling more like a calorie wall where you had no energy?
I had no energy I had no energy. I felt like I mean, you guys kept on calling it a calorie wall. I would still eat food, and it wouldn't really change anything. It's like my muscles were not strong enough past 13 miles of hiking.
Endurance of, okay.
Yeah, it's just the straight endurance of it. So, I mean, what I had been training for was with a lot of running. I had been building up my cardiovascular system, so it wasn't like I was out of breath. That was never the thing. It was really like my legs are just tired, man. They're just, everything's just tired. And so, that's when I started to slow down to about 2 miles an hour, as opposed to like what we were keeping, which was probably just under 3 up until that point.
Yeah, so we kind of climbed up out of that burn, and we're like, all right, let's find a good spot for dinner. Sat and had a really nice dinner next to just kind of a little lake there, good vantage point. I don't know how much Derek remembered of it because I'm pretty sure he passed out asleep. But
one thing I loved about not just this dinner spot, but in multiple break areas throughout the whole week, like there's so many big rocks up in the Uintas, especially that high, and a lot of them made fantastic backrests. When you sit them down and just lean back against this big rock, it's so comfortable.
I don't know. He's talking about rocks are not the most comfortable chairs, but when you're that tired, they are all right.
They're a great backrest.
I think I got pictures of him sleeping on a rock, like on every day.
So, pretty good.
He's pretty good at those little cat naps, for sure.
So I had slowed everyone down. At that point, we were having dinner, I think, in a spot we weren't supposed to have it. And then we climbed up into this one area that was kind of going towards our next pass. We were slowly going up and up. That was really pretty up there. You could see everything. And, of course, we were hitting there as the sun was starting to set. And so, like, the edges of the tops of the mountains were all, like, this golden light. And that was really cool.
It was way pretty. A massive, beautiful basin, kind of meadowy basin down in there that, it was pretty breathtaking. We're looking for wildlife, thinking, man, how could anything not want to live right here? It's just so nice, so pretty. And for those of you that do want to see this, make sure that you are subscribed to our Outdoor Vitals YouTube channel. We actually took a new camera on this trip that films in 360, and so we may upload a full video of just 360 footage of these areas, so you could kind of go back and see some of this that we're talking about once we do post that video. But the pass that we were going towards was called Dead Horse Pass. And I would just say, like, the lighting, the pass itself was just so pretty. And I think, we'll maybe hear at the end here, but I think it was maybe one of the crowd favorite passes of the entire trip.
I think so. I think that experience from dinner and that approach towards the pass, like now that I've had a few days to just like kind of think back and rewind, reflect a little bit and talk about it, I think that was like probably my most memorable experience, was just those couple hours of the lighting, the temperature, the scenery. It was, for me, that was probably my favorite like experience, was probably the last 2 hours of daylight of that day.
Yeah, I look back at my pictures. They do not do it justice,
Amazing.
by the way. I hope someone else took better pictures.
Yeah, so we climb up to this pass, which, and one of the things that is crazy about the Uintas is a lot of times, even on the approach, you basically have to get right up to the cliffs to even be able to see where the trail goes. Like, it's from a distance, you look at it and you're like, I have no idea how a trail is going to get over that mountain. That's a cliff, you know what I mean? Like, you can't even see it. They camouflage in and they're just little tiny goat trails, a lot of them. And so the trail, like, I remember just as we were hiking up, I thought it was going to go one way, and man, it turned back a totally different way. But kind of a steep little climb. Saw a deer just hanging out underneath a really cool little ribbon cliff, and very peaceful. Got up to the top, and I think as soon as we crested, we were all like, wow, like that was where everyone just stopped, and it just kind of took everyone's breath away, because the basin on the other side of the pass was every bit as beautiful. It's just this tight little basin, lake in the bottom, beautiful views. The sun was just going down. In fact, I wish we'd been there just a few minutes earlier, because I haven't reviewed the footage, but I think the video footage and pictures were just behind where the light needed to be to just really capture how amazing that looked. But just absolutely an incredible pass to stand in. And then, I mean, yeah, it is Dead Horse Pass, and we found out pretty quick why, because I thought the trail was going to go to the right, and it turns out it goes clear left and just carved down this tiny game trail, essentially.
Horrible switchbacks there, and the light was going down, so near the bottom of it, we had to pull out the headlamps. That pass, the bottom, the other side of that pass going down, it felt like it was going on forever. And I had jelly legs at that point, so it was like, I wasn't feeling totally secure while I was going down that thing.
You were relying on the trekking poles.
I was relying on the trekking poles, which is one of my big regrets of this trip. But the big boulders all over the trail as well. Like, that trail was just boulders in that spot. So it was rough going on down that thing. I imagine going up would be easier, like going the opposite way, and then like the trail's cut a little bit more steady on the other side of it where we approached from. So if you're going the normal way, that pass probably isn't as intense. But
to give you an idea, though, that traverse down the backside of that pass goes from 11,430 feet down to like 11,200 feet in like a quarter of a mile or less. So you're dropping quite a bit. It's very steep, and it's just a very loose talus slope. And the trail itself, in a lot of places, was more narrow than your two shoes side by side. Like, there was a lot of places where it was just extremely narrow, tiny trail that was still off camber. It just wasn't quite as steep as the rest of the slope below you. But that was probably the skinniest, most faint trail of the whole trip. And
all of these passes were, super tall. This one wasn't even, above 12,000 feet, but multiple passes on this trip were just so high up with really steep trails. Tayson mentioned we were, had our breath taken away at the top. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to prove how much of that was the view and how much of that was the climb. And then we had to climb all down it on this pass, on this off-camber tiny trails that Tyler and all these guys have been talking about. But that was still probably one of my favorite passes the whole trip.
Yeah, I mean, the physical exhaustion of the pass I didn't like, but the views were amazing.
Yeah, I was all over it. I was loving it. So we ended up crawling off there, got off right at dark, found a place really quick to set up our tents. It was a really awesome spot. This incredible backdrop straight into the cliffs that we just came down.
It was right, it was right off of it. It was near Dead Horse Lake, I believe. I was looking for pictures of it when I came home. I was like, where was that?
Yeah. It was a really good spot, and I think everyone got their tent set up pretty quick. On my watch, we had gone 18 and a half miles on day one, and we pretty much finished hiking at probably 9 p.m. So from 11 to 9, we covered the 18 and a half miles, and I think it was good. I felt good, and I personally had an interesting night of sleep where I just happened to put my pad in a little bit of a bow spot, and I kept waking up with my legs locked somehow, and I was kind of like losing circulation in my feet. But it made me really nervous because of the pain I had in my lower leg from that ultra marathon. I kept thinking I was waking up and that there was something wrong with my leg, but I think it was just a weird tent pitch for me in a bow spot.
I had moments where I was bending my foot and I was like, am I about to get a Charlie horse? Like, it felt like it was on the edge of it. I never did get one, but I was scared, and I was stretching out my feet.
We were harping on you like crazy for hydration. I think with last year with Brennan, with me getting, elevation sick on the Beaver Skyline Trail in the Tushers, I was for sure harping on you a lot to be like, are you drinking water? Are you getting electrolytes? It's probably like overarching mama bear, like you're like, shut up, Tayson, just leave me alone. But I was very adamant that no one was going to get elevation sick on this trip, and so I don't know if that. Anyways,
I mean, another problem with that is like last time I'd been up in the Uintas when I tried to do Kings Peak, I got elevation sick like a quarter mile away from the top, and then I turned around and went back down and felt better. Same thing happened on Mount Albert. I was about a quarter mile away from the top, and I got elevation sickness, and then I turned around. It's just like this, like nausea mixed with this like panic attack kind of a feeling, just like everything horrible. So I mean, I was afraid of it too. So I was pounding that stuff as well. I've never gotten it not trying to summit a peak, so I've never gotten it outside of those two instances. But it was important for me as well that I felt like I wasn't going to get altitude sickness. So the drinking of the water and the salts and the...
Yeah, so it was good. I mean, I think we woke up the next day. I kind of asked how everyone was doing. No one really felt like they had elevation sickness, which is always a good sign after getting a full day on trail, and everyone seemed to be in pretty good spirits. So I think day 2 started off pretty well. We started straight into downhill, And my body did not like that.
I would say I felt good until we actually started the trail.
We took 2 steps down the trail.
I stepped 2 steps down the trail, and suddenly my knee was on fire. Like, it hurt. So I started the day being a slow hiker because my joints, and then what happened was, like, it started with my knee, moved over to my, like, hip, my opposite hip, and then the knee stopped hurting, and then the other knee started hurting. So something was hurting the whole time while we were going on that downhill. And then we made our way to a river where there was a moose. And then we started going up an uphill.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I also was kind of the same way where, for me, the injuries that I had sustained in that ultra was really on the front part of my calf. So kind of the muscle that goes along your shin bone. And really what that is, and what fires that up for me, is going downhill and kind of like braking, where you're kind of stepping on your heel and then easing into the step down. And so I also started off pretty slow going. Like it took me a while to basically warm up my leg to the downhill. And again, that was definitely on the back of my mind, getting started this morning, but also like, man, we got a lot of miles left to go. I really hope this doesn't get worse every day and compound, but
the plan for day 2 was to go from Dead Horse Pass up and over Red Knob Pass, which was another big one, and then through another basin over Porcupine Pass, and then to camp that night at the base of Kings Peak, essentially on the west side of Kings Peak, so that we could do Anderson Pass first thing in the morning on day 3 and have like the clearest weather possible. Because usually those high peaks get bad weather in the afternoon and evening and through the night. But there's usually a calm window in the mornings, unless you're just in the middle of a multi-day storm. So
Kings Peak, for those of you that aren't familiar with Utah at all, it's the tallest peak in Utah. So we're pretty much at the highest point of Utah. Was our plan to get right up to that on day 2.
And it's like 13,580 feet, something like that.
Yeah, something around there.
So
we were doing everything we could to set ourselves up for success through Anderson Pass, because Anderson Pass is where we got turned around the year before. So it was like, get set up as quick as we can and as best we can to cross through Anderson while we have the potential best chance at weather, because Anderson's a brutal pass. It's a 12,000 foot pass, and you don't want to be up there when the storms come through. But
yeah, that's the place that will have the highest chances at the worst weather. So that's what we're trying to set ourselves up for, is to have the best chances at the best weather in the area that has the best chances at the worst weather. So,
but what that equated to is that we needed to click off about 22 miles today on day 2. So
we also knew that we had good weather for days 1 and 2, but that day 3, the day that we had to get over Anderson Pass, it did have weather on the forecast for the afternoon. So we were really trying to get there and get through it in the small window that
Wasn't
we had.
the forecast saying it was going to be clear the first 2.5 days, and then it was going to be raining after that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is like,
which was a big deal.
It's like the most up to date forecast we could get at the time we started our trip. Which then you're entering the backcountry where you don't have the internet, so you can't keep like tabs on the up to date weather forecast. So
and we'll get to more weather here in a minute for sure. But so we start off day 2. We drop down and then we climb straight up out of Red Knob Pass, and that pass was actually really cool. I think the name Red Knob makes you think it's like just a little blip, you know what I mean? But it's a full-size pass and had some really amazing vantage points of the basin behind us. Kind of had like this hidden basin next to us that we got to see. And then we got all the way up to the top, and then you could just have another, every pass was just kind of like this, where like you get up to the top and you look and you look at just the most massive looking basins, and you're like, yep, we got to go all the way across that and then around the bend and then across the next massive basin like this. And really breathtaking. I would say, like, for me, like, I just can't like look as far as I can look and think about like I've got to get there today. Like I just have to kind of just keep my mind on like the next miles, right? But it is really, really cool to just stand on those passes and see, because looking back at Dead Horse, that basin there was just absolutely beautiful. In fact, we crossed one hiker that said, you know, they were doing a shortened version of the Highline. They kind of teed in about halfway through the Highline Trail, and they're like, man, this is our favorite pass that we've seen yet. And it really is. It's just a beautiful basin there.
Red Knob was definitely my second favorite view. I think my first favorite view was that, you know, the Dead Horse Pass that we had hit the night of day one. And then the next morning, day two, Tayson's talking about this Red Knob Pass. The views you could see off in like so many different directions into multiple different basins. Obviously the one we just came through and the one we were going into, but you could see where all these different mountain ranges or big peaks, I guess, came and met all in a similar area, and it was really beautiful.
It's kind of a four-way intersection of four different basins.
What I did not enjoy about Red Knob Pass as much was the trail going up it. It was just, there was no switchbacks. It was just kind of like this straight shot up this like super steep mountain pass. And
yeah, that was brutal. That one was.
It was like it was almost steep enough to where, you know, you put your hands on the ground in front of you in certain sections to like climb up the dirt.
Look, man, I use 4-wheel drive, aka trekking poles, for a reason. They come in handy on passes like this.
Well, what would you guys have guessed that the elevation at the top of Red Knob was?
I would say 11.7.
Yeah, 11.6.
No idea.
Well, it's 11,975.
Wow.
So that was one of our highest passes.
I do remember on that pass, it was the halfway point that I thought was the actual pass, and then it like took a right, and then it kept going.
Kept going.
You got into
right.
like a saddle.
Loved that.
And like a false summit.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. Mostly because I was in a lot of pain, and I was starting to feel exhausted from the day before. So I was not having a great time hiking-wise, personally. Couldn't quite keep up with the rest of the group, and that pass was one where it definitely separated me from the rest of the group.
We passed another group coming the opposite direction, and there's this lady and two guys, and I think this is the group Tayson mentioned. They've been doing a section of the Highline, not the full Highline Trail, but they were going into Dead Horse Basin, towards Dead Horse Lake, I guess. I don't know what the basin's called, but the lady, she was up front, and she actually was well ahead of the other people she was with in her group. And so she caught up to us, and we crossed paths and were chatting for a little while. It turns out it was her first time backpacking, and she was loving it and having a great time. So that was cool to see, you know, the first happy person that we crossed paths with on this trip so far. And then her companions show up, and these two guys, and they're the ones that have been backpacking more, but they looked a little more beat than she did, and
Heavier packs.
yeah, for sure they had heavier packs, and they were.
There's a stereotype out there that I just want to note, and it's if you have a frying pan fixated to the outside of your backpack, you're not one of us. I don't know how this. Like, there was a handful of people that we like passed that are carrying a full like frying pan, just lashed to the outside of their pack. Like, don't do that to yourself, guys. It's just, that's rough. It's not going to do you any favors, especially in that kind of country.
I don't know. I have some, so I've had good experiences carrying very heavy gear, and it's only, you know, like 9 miles a day or something, not like what we were doing. And in that, like, I've had like big, just straight up foam pads, like 4 inches thick, like wrapped to and that was like half the weight of my stuff, and I had a 50-pound pack in total. But you know what? When you actually get there and you have all the comforts, actually camping is amazing. That's like a big part of it. So I don't know if I want to crap on those people.
I mean, if you're going into fish and you want to like fry up a fish, I could potentially understand it, but you could also bring tinfoil.
I can't
I mean, you could also
understand it with the frying pan and the fish, though, because if you're going to catch a big fish, it's probably not going to fit in your frying pan, so you need tinfoil anyways. But the cooking with the tinfoil works every bit as good as the...
Yeah. So if I'm gonna carry extra weight, it's not gonna be in a frying pan. That's all I'm saying.
I'm gonna try and take some middle ground here, not Hey, listener, if you hike with a frying pan, we still love you. It may not sound like it, but we do accept you. There could be some justifiable good experiences with a frying pan. People like to do wilderness cooking, bring some hash browns, some mushrooms, onions, peppers, grill up some food.
Yeah.
It's all about
What we really need
enjoy
is
your experience how you want. It may weigh a lot more, but you're not inferior.
I will say, though,
You may enjoy it, and you're very well justified.
I agree, absolutely. But I just think where Tayson's coming from here, if you're doing what we were doing,
Yeah.
you are not going to have an enjoyable experience because the majority of your time will be on trail, not at camp. So, Joe, your thick pad,
Yep.
terrible
No, I
time
agree.
on this trip. A frying pan, terrible time on this trip.
we need a titanium manufacturer to build a big frying pan.
A big one.
A
yeah.
big one.
Like a
So
10 to 12 inch frying pan.
there's like 6-inch little tiny frying pans. I have one. They're just not big enough. We need one. So just wanted to put that out there. And if you carry a frying pan, no, I don't hate you. Keep backpacking. We love you. Just don't do the full Uinta Highline Trail with the frying pan, or I may judge you in my own head and maybe on a podcast.
Well,
so.
it's one thing to do the Uinta Highline in 8 days with a frying pan. It's another to try and do it in 4.5. So when our goal for day 2 was 22 to 23 miles,
Look, I'm not saying I think I saw 3 frying pans on this trip.
Did you really?
I don't think I saw a smiling face on someone who's carrying a pack with the frying pan. That's all I gotta say, all right?
yeah, but we also only smiled at the tops of the passes.
Oh.
So smiling and having a good time are not mutually exclusive. Like,
Okay.
you know, there's like when you're that high in the mountains, everyone is gonna suffer some, whether you're packing light or not, and we did do some good suffering.
Yeah.
So
the next basin down, that's when I really started to hurt again in my knees because the pain kind of went away as we were going up. And we were going down, my knees started to hurt again. But that was like the big grassy open area
the
with all the
sheep.
sheep.
Yeah.
We actually met a guy who recognized you down there who had camera gear.
He had a lot of camera
Said he
gear.
regretted bringing the camera gear. I remember that.
He had a massive tripod, but yeah, really cool kid. He'd actually followed us a little bit and met us at a show once as well. So it's cool, and that was kind of the start of us running into people on trail that knew us. And it was pretty wild how many people we ran into like that, which we'll get into more so in the next day. But bumped into him, went down, had lunch next to a river, and we were, at this point, I would say I was becoming concerned for Joe. And at this point, a lot of it was just me watching your demeanor, Joe, and just being like, doesn't look like he's having fun right now. He just looks like he's zoning out. He's hiking by himself. He's not smiling. Contrary to what Tyler says, I think smiling can be important. Just kidding.
I just said they're not mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive, but Joe just looked like he wasn't having as much fun at this point, and I was definitely concerned about that. So we had lunch. Joe left camp a little bit early, and we'd said, hey, about 200 yards down here, you're going to need to take a hard left on a trail. We let him go 10, 15 minutes early, and then we followed. And the trail was a pretty dang hard left, and
Like made you backtrack.
yeah, like a V style. And so we started up that trail, and I started to get real nervous that maybe Joe missed it. So we started charging up the trail to see if we could catch Joe. Just about the time I was getting real concerned, we bumped into him.
I was feeling all right on that ascent, by the way.
Well, it happened to us the year before with Brennan, where he was sick and he went ahead, and then he took a trail we didn't want to take.
Well, I had the Onyx thing on my phone, so I was
Yeah.
following it.
So did he.
Well, that's his problem.
Last year,
I don't want to get
Yeah.
lost in the bounds.
I had to go run to go catch up to Brennan last year, and that was not on my agenda for the day. Too.
Yeah. But anyways, we catch up to Joe. We start hiking.
A lot of climbing at that point.
Yeah, it was kind of a sneaky little climb in there that didn't really notice on the map, but you feel it, when you're on the trail. And got up on top of this area and, man, came across this really beautiful lake that just had this really cool, like you have the lake and then just a straight vantage point out across this big basin and area. And I thought that was really, really cool. And then kept hiking a little bit further. And Joe, where were you at this point?
A little behind you guys.
Physically and mentally here.
I mean, I had been my joints were just in pain, but I was also like more muscularly tired than I would have guessed that I would have been on that day too. And so I was not in a good place. I think mentally I was not in a good place because I felt like I was so much slower than the rest of the group. And I knew that I was going to probably be averaging 2 miles an hour, which is kind of what I figured I would be at. Anyway, like I think I factored in from when I had done the like shakeout thing and be like I was at like 2.2 miles or 2.18 or something like that miles per hour by the end of the day after I like including rest times, including everything. So I was kind of like ready to accept kind of just the slowness of it, but I was definitely feeling a lot of pressure of like not hiking fast enough for these guys. I also had I was dealing with trekking poles and I was dealing with pain and I don't know.
Also felt like you couldn't eat at lunch. Remember you were already not really excited about the food that you had.
Yeah, the food that I had, I wasn't too happy about the food that I had. I got too much sweet stuff, I think.
Yeah, you were kind of taking a lot of food donations at that point.
I did some
summer sausage.
That day.
That was nice.
Yeah.
That tasted great. But yeah, I was just in generally not in a very good mood. I could feel like part of me was just wanting you guys to just keep going and I would catch up with you, but you guys kept on slowing down for me. But I definitely wasn't in the headspace to explain that too much. But but I was also mad that I had to film a whole bunch of stuff and that was also slowing me down. And it was like, I just can't. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of factors involved.
I will say, like when you are focused a lot on filming, that does have an impact on how you feel about a trip. It slows you down and makes you feel like a hard trip is like harder for sure. I've felt that before.
So it was slowing me down, and then I was like, well, this time I was slowed down because of the camera. I wasn't slowed down because I was slow, like we're on a flat section or something like that. I was waiting to get a shot, and then I couldn't quite catch up. So yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff involved, and then I had the you're kicked off the island conversation.
I got hung up because I went to film something off this edge. I got behind people. No, I dropped my water cap, so I had to filter some water because I'd tainted my water essentially, and so I was walking behind Joe, and at this point in the day, we were walking on a flat piece of ground. And it was like, hey, we got to click off the miles. We got to get 22 miles. And as I was following Joe, I was watching my watch and my pace, and we were walking at a 30-minute per mile pace, so 2 mile an hour pace. And I thought, this isn't going to get us there by dark. It was kind of the questions I started to have. And so after a little while walking with Joe and I probably asked you 50 million questions of like where you're at, how you doing. Joe probably doesn't remember any of it. And so then I kind of cut back ahead, and these guys were all hanging out, sitting on some rocks, looking across this next massive basin. And I just kind of said to these guys, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm concerned that if Joe's feeling this way on, day 2, what's he going to feel like on day 3? What's he going to feel like on day 4, day 5? I think we had planned like a 26-mile day 5, and so it was just going to get more difficult. We were just going to get to harder passes and so on and so forth. And so, basically, Brigham's giving me the eye roll and Derek's looking at me, with his optimistic self, but questioning. And these guys basically pressure me into having a conversation with Joe, right? So twist my arm, bend my fingers, type of thing where I'm like, okay, Joe shows up, and I feel like I've got to initiate.
As soon as Joe catches up, Tayson just jumps on it.
Oh, man. Pretty much, yeah. It was not probably delicate. I don't know. I have no idea.
It was
but
plenty
No, it's actually me who talked first when you got there. But anyways, we started into that conversation.
Yeah, it just kind of started to the idea was I just wanted to start to get it out there in the air of just being like, where are you at? This is our situation. We might need to start thinking about what to do if this gets worse. And somehow it just went into full blown. Like in my mind, I was going to have a conversation around like, let's start playing out ideas and like what ifs. And somehow it just went straight into like, no, this is a great bailout point. See you later.
Okay, so this is there were
I don't know.
There were basically options given. One of the options is that you guys would hike ahead. I would probably get the extra Garmin, and so we could communicate if we needed to. But you guys would hike ahead, and then I would just hike at my own pace. And that was kind of like the idea there. That was one thing. Then the other thing was like, well, Joe, you're having trouble doing this. You could be out here hiking the same amount of time and do Kings Peak. That was one option. Do Kings Peak and then take a left and go down and go down
Henry Fork.
Henry Fork, yeah, thank you. And you could basically have a great 5-day trip with a lot less miles in it, or you could bail out. At this point, because we were not that far from a bailout point that went to Moon Lake.
Not that far means 12 and a half miles minimum.
Oh, it was 2 miles of backtracking and then 12 miles down to Moon Lake.
That was the closest road to us at that point.
Yeah, so that was the closest bailout point, and that was all downhill, so that looked nice to me. Now, the whole day I was going, okay, I shouldn't bail out because I don't need to bail out. There's nothing terribly wrong with me where I need to bail out. And then I would hit like a flat section and feel fine. So like in my head, I was like, should I bail out? I'm like, no, I just can't keep up with these guys. That's all it is. It's not that I can't hike this. It's that I can't keep up with them. Now the number one reason that I did not choose to follow you guys and just go at my own pace and keep doing the trail was because we were told that it was going to be raining the next 3 days. And if I were going slower than you guys, there was a good chance that I was going to be stuck between Anderson Pass and North Pole Pass when bad weather would come in. And I didn't want to be alone in the mountains having to get over North Pole Pass.
With the closest bailout at 18 or 20 miles.
Yeah, so that was like a different, to me it was like, okay, I would be by myself in the mountains in like a lightning/snow area at the highest area in this whole trail, or the second highest. And I didn't want to be there by myself. So that made it clear to me. And it's like, I also didn't want to have the same experience going up Kings Peak, being alone, and also having altitude sickness and then having the same problem. So I was like, if I'm going to do this alone, I don't want to do it during bad weather. So I was like, well, might as well bail out here. That's what I decided.
So one question I wanted to ask is I think one of the options in your mind was to hike behind us and just kind of catch up to us. But I think we kind of talked through that, right? So what was your understanding of why not do that?
That day I could have caught up to you guys. You guys were talking about getting over Anderson Pass that day, which I knew wasn't going to happen. Like in my head, I'm like, that ain't going to happen. And I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen.
I'm going to make sure.
I was like, that's one too many asks for that day. But there was... I think that the most realistic thing was that I would slow down if the weather was good. I could slow down and just finish the day after, do a 6-day hike. Could you fix that door? I could do like a 6-day hike and finish the day after or whatever and get picked up probably by someone else as opposed to you guys. I had all everything was charted for my family to come pick me up. I deal with migraines all the time, and that was my number one concern going into this, was that I was going to get migraine up in the middle of the Uintas and therefore have to stay a day behind everybody else. So I had that option anyway. But it was really the weather that stopped me from doing the thing by myself. Because I feel and I felt this very strongly then, is if I was doing the normal hiking pace of like 13 to 16 miles a day on the Uinta Highline, which is the normal pace for most people, not 20 plus, I'd be fine. I would have rested the first day a lot better. I wouldn't have done that last little pass that killed me. My knees would have probably everything would have felt better. I would have, even at my 2 mile an hour pace, I still would have been, morning before I would have gotten there before dark or whatever. So at that pace, I knew I could do it, but it was the weather that stopped me. So there's a part of me that wants to go back next year and just like put out a whole 7 days, not 5.
It's a significant difference to go from, say, 15 miles to 20 or 16 miles to 22, like, because the day gets exponentially harder as you go on, and so it's absolutely significant. There's a lot of days later in the trip where we got to like dinner time and we're sitting at like 16 or 18 miles, and I'm like, it'd be so nice to be done right now, it just adds that different element. But so anyways, we actually have, I think, a decent amount of the conversation recorded. It'll be interesting to play that back and see what that's like. Maybe I'll play it back and learn some things about management that I can put into practice and communication.
I didn't think anything was bad. I don't think there was anything handled wrong. I knew I was going too slow for the group and that they wanted to do these ridiculous miles.
It was tough. Joe was very sad, I think, he was like, no, like, I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to have to, and he was, and there was some of that, and that was tough, I think, to see. You could tell that you did not want to not continue on.
I didn't want to quit because I'd quit other stuff before. I'd quit another thing when I got like rained out completely and had like a mental breakdown on a trail before, and I wasn't there. I was just physically hurting. I wasn't like anywhere. Nothing else was wrong. And I wasn't in so much pain that I couldn't do it for a normal hiker, but I couldn't do it at the almost a marathon a day pace.
So we ended up giving Joe the second Garmin that I have, and making sure we were all tuned in there, and parted ways. One of the exciting parts of this was going to be that this was it your, I don't know if this was your first or if you just don't like it, but you don't like sleeping outdoors alone. And I was
well, that was my previous experience, is that the last time I had done that alone, I had a horrible night, like a horrible one, like ugly tears, kind of like by myself, horrible situation. And I didn't realize before I had done that would happen to me. But this time I was fine. I think I was like so tired when I backtracked the 2 miles, and then I hiked another like mile and a half or whatever to find a good hiking spot on the way to Moon Lake. Which was the bailout point I took instead of going over Porcupine, because it would be all downhill, and it was like, and I knew my parents, who were going to be the ones picking me up, we had vacationed in Moon Lake a million times. They loved that spot. That would not be a horrible time for them to pick me up there. There was a million reasons to go over there. I started down there, and I set up the tent at like 6 p.m. or something. Had a couple hours of daylight left. I got into that tent after eating 2 dinners. That was nice.
2 dinners?
I ate another peak refuel.
Wow, nice. But you had 2 peak refills?
Yeah, right in a row. It's just like, I stopped and had one, and then I ate another one. I don't know what.
Nice
you guys
work,
are so
man.
prissy about the food.
I'm impressed. No, I'm all for it. These guys are like, I can't finish my food, and I'm like, nah, bring it on.
No. I can eat forever. I don't eat until I don't stop eating till I hurt. But I just set up that tent, and I went straight sleep, and I slept for 13 hours.
Holy smokes.
That's what happened. Nice. And I felt great the next day.
That's what I was missing this whole entire week, man. I never caught up on sleep. The whole week.
I felt wonderful. I'm like, man, maybe I should turn around and just go do the trail. Then I was like, I don't want to backtrack another 2 miles again.
That's awesome.
But I guess I'll finish up this thing, and we can finish up this part 1 of this thing, because we're at an hour now. But I left. I went to Moon Lake. It was on the map. It's 11.4. It was probably like 12 miles down. I went through a couple burn areas that were kind of a pain in the butt, but they weren't like horrible. That trail, it like skirts like these big cliffs that go off to the side where you can see down into the river. It only does that a couple times. It kind of stays a little far to the side there, and I was kind of disappointed in that. I'm like, I should be seeing these cliffs all the time, but I'm not. I don't know who carved that trail, but they're an idiot. And all these bridges and stuff, there were places where it was washed out. I think I actually started getting some hot spots in my feet, and I, at that point, didn't care because I was like, I'm going home. Mm-hmm. So I just went ahead and caused some blisters on my way down, and it was a nice little walk. I was listening to podcasts very loudly as I was going through the forest, and yeah, it was just, and I made it down to Moon Lake.
What time did you get out?
Oh, we got out. I think I got down there at like 11:30 a.m. or something like that, maybe noon. And then my parents were down there at the beach waiting for me. And then we took off, and then it started to rain like crazy. And I was like, I think I made the right decision. That was my assumption. Of course, I find out later that the weather wasn't nearly as bad as we had planned for. But
not that night.
We went down there. It was like lightning and crazy rain and everything as we were driving out of that area. So I just assumed that it was going to be with you guys in a couple hours after that. So
that's interesting.
And I went, and then I rested, and it was nice.
That does sound very nice, because I'm pretty sure the second after you parted ways with us, these guys just started sprinting down the trail. So it got real intense real fast after you left, because I think these guys were all like, we got to make up miles, and just, I don't know, I felt like we just turned up the heat, and I was like, oh man, here we go. And we covered some miles after that. I don't know. I mean, we parted ways with you at like 2 in the afternoon, and we were sitting at like 10 miles. And somehow we found another 12 miles in the next like 6 hours or something. I mean,
yeah, we had another 12,000 foot pass to get over, Porcupine Pass. And so we had to cross a basin to get to that one, and then we had to cross another basin.
The longest basin, I swear.
Well, the long above tree line basin that was like...
It's really cool.
It was like, I don't know, walking just across like 50 or 60 football fields of grass. Like no trees, just grass.
The trail is like hardly there. It's just mainly like find your own trail situation, because like the grass just grows in over the trail and a lot of it. And that 50 to 60 football fields is a good way to describe what that was.
All like at a slight incline.
Yes.
Because we were climbing the whole time that we were going up that grass. It was just a slight incline. But we were feeling like we had to make some time to get there before dark. And that was a pretty big day. It was. Yeah, I mean,
I remember right there. Well, let's finish out day 2, and then we'll part it. But so I remember right there, I was like starting to feel it a little bit, and I'm like, man, I'm trying to eat some food and like juice up, get some calories in me for this pass and stuff, because that long drawn out thing was like a sneaky energy sucker. It just kind of took it out of you. But this was definitely one of those passes, though, as you were approaching. I think I've got some video footage of this. I'm like, I cannot see how we get up this pass. And you'd walk like another mile, it felt like, and you'd be like, I still cannot see where the trail goes up this pass. And it was till you were like a few hundred yards away from the pass, or starting up like the real climb, when you're like, okay, I can kind of see where this pass, goes up through here, or the trail goes up through this pass, because it was just totally camouflaged, totally hidden. Really interesting pass. But the pass was really cool. I didn't think it was like an overly difficult one. I think honestly the approach was the hardest part of that pass. But
all of those passes that day made me really grateful that we didn't try to wait out the storm the year before.
Oh,
because if we had waited out the storm that year prior and then tried to go over those in the snow, that would have been pretty sketchy.
With all the just gravel and mud and dirt that we would have
there could have been some injuries, for sure, injuries. Yeah.
But there's a lot of places to step off the trail by accident if it was under snow, and a lot of places to slide a long ways down.
But But not just slide like ragdoll end over end in the boulders.
Yeah, it was. I felt very justified between Dead Horse, Porcupine, Anderson Pass. I was 110% sure we made the right decision to get off the trail the year before. But made it up through Porcupine, sat down, had dinner. Very enjoyable dinner. We're looking out across this basin with so many lakes in it. I mean, I can't remember how I counted, like 11 lakes that I could see or something like that. Just lakes everywhere. Could see fish jumping. And we had to go across that whole basin through a tiny pass called Tungsten Pass and then across the whole next basin to get to the base of Anderson. And that was all what we had to do after dinner. So I think we still had like 7 or so miles to do after dinner. That might have been like the most number of miles we did post dinner, but it was really quite enjoyable of an evening. It was, I think I enjoyed all of it until the last climb to camp. That's where I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this hike right now. I want to be in camp. It's starting to get dark. I want my tent to be pitched, and it was something. But
did you make it to Anderson?
We made it to the
base of Anderson.
To the base.
There's a shelf, like a nice flat shelf, just under Anderson Pass, and we made it right up onto the top of that, like right as the sun was going down.
Nice.
So if you're as fast as Derek setting up your tent, he probably had his up before it got dark. Brigham probably hadn't found a tent site by the time Derek's tent was up.
No.
I'm kind of in the middle, but so yeah, we were pitching the tents like right at dark that day.
Yeah, I think another part of that was I think I had started to feel maybe a little bit behind on hydration. So I remember that night, I think that was a night that I stayed up in my tent for about 45 minutes and kind of forced myself to put some food down and to basically drink about 1 liter of water, just trying to help myself get reset, rehydrated, refueled, knowing that literally the next morning we were going to wake up and charge straight through Anderson Pass. And so that was kind of my last thoughts, I think, on that day. It was really pretty, beautiful basins going through Tungsten Pass. Tungsten Lake was very pretty. But I just started to get a little bit of a pit in my stomach where it was like I didn't feel hungry, and I was concerned about that, and so I was kind of doing anything I could to get in front of it. So trying to get hydrated, trying to eat, while the rest of these guys, I think Derek was probably asleep before I also got in my tent, but I stayed up for a while, and Tyler was trying to get to sleep. He was planning on getting up early to go do Kings Peak in the morning, so he was planning on getting up at like 5:30 in the morning.
No one else wanted to do it with me, so I had to make it an extracurricular and get up
that's
early.
after hours hiking, so he had to wake up to get that done at 5:30 the next morning, so he was trying to get to sleep. But yeah, I think this is probably a good spot to close out maybe part 1 of the Highline Trail. I don't know, was there any other aspects of day 2 we needed to hit really quick? Just if you are not subscribed, though, make sure you are subscribed so you can get part 2 of this trail. It does continue to have some excitement in it for sure. We particularly around our other favorite pass on that dang mountain called Polar Bear Pass, aka North Pole Pass. Got real fun, real exciting. But make sure you are subscribed. Also, for those of you that have not yet left a review for us, make sure you do leave a review on the podcast. Leave us your comments. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We're happy to read it or to see it all, so we can get some feedback on this. You can watch and comment on YouTube. We have a Live Ultralight podcast YouTube channel. That'd be a great place to leave comments, I would say, on this particular episode. We can have some discussions there, answer any questions you have. Or you can reach out to us directly at liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com. But go leave us a review. We really appreciate it. We're going to sign off.
I'm going to read a review.
Oh, we've got a review.
We got a review on July 26th.
All right.
From Westicles13. Love this podcast. 5 stars. Longtime Live Ultralight member here, and I love the podcast almost as much as my Ventus hoodie. Really enjoy the interviews and the in-depth product reviews, even Brigham's explanation of fabrics/textiles, etc. Most importantly, I use these episodes to help pass the time driving between outdoor adventures in the car. Always informative, always entertaining, and always makes my drive feel shorter and much more enjoyable. Thank you, Westicles 13.
Yeah, appreciate it. And yeah, like the feedback there. So again, go ahead and write us a review. We'll go ahead and sign off on day 2 of the Highline, and we'll pick up on day 3 to go see if we can get through Anderson Pass in the next episode.